These museums refused to display these cursed Viking artifacts, and for good reason. The Beardmore relics, the artifacts that destroyed careers and were pulled off display for decades. If a Viking sword could ruin a man's life, ignite an international scandal, and vanish from museum displays for more than 30 years, it would be the Beardmore relics. And the craziest part, the Royal Ontario Museum actually displayed them until everything connected to them turned toxic. Literally, some staff swore the items brought nothing but misfortune into the building. In 1936, a Canadian prospector named James Dodd walked into the ROM claiming he had discovered a cache of Viking artifacts, a sword, an axe head, a spear, and fragments of chainmail, now in the remote wilderness near Beardmore, Ontario. If true, this would radically rewrite North American history. It would mean Vikings explored deep into Canada, far beyond Newfoundland, centuries before Columbus. The museum actually bought the story instantly. They didn't just display the relics, they celebrated them. They were proof, tangible, dramatic proof of Norse, presence in the Canadian interior. Now, problems began immediately. Museum staff reported bizarre accidents around the display. The glass case broke multiple times with no impact. Equipment malfunctioned whenever the relics were being moved. A researcher even claimed the sword fell off its mount overnight despite being bolted in. Internal memos described the collection as troublesome and persistently unsettling, but the real disaster came in 1956. A witness came forward. He said Dodd had lied. The relics weren't unearthed in the wilderness. He had bought them from a Norwegian immigrant years earlier. The entire discovery was a hoax. Suddenly, the ROM wasn't dealing with mysterious accidents, they were dealing with humiliation. Major newspaper headlines mocked the museum, careers were destroyed, director Charles Curley's reputation was shredded beyond repair, and then the museum did something it had never done before. They pulled the artifacts off display and locked them away. For decades, the ROM refused to let them be public again, not for research, not for exhibition, and definitely not for education. They refused because the artifacts had become cursed in a different way. Not supernaturally, but historically. They were a symbol of deception, controversy, embarrassment, and institutional failure. Even today, the Beardmore relics exist, but you won't find them proudly displayed in the museum. They are a cautionary tale museums don't like to talk about and often quietly keep out of sight. The Kensington runestone, the artifact experts call too dangerous to display as fact. Imagine finding a 200-pound stone covered in mysterious Viking runes in the middle of American farmland, and then watching the academic world implode over whether it's real. Then imagine museums refusing to display it as genuine because doing so would ignite chaos in the historical community. That's the nightmare surrounding the Kensington runestone. In 1898, a Swedish immigrant farmer named Olof Oman uncovered a large stone slab tangled in the roots of a poplar tree in Minnesota. Carved into the surface was a chilling message written in Norse runes, a message describing a deadly Viking expedition in 1362 where 10 men were unalived. Now, if authentic, this would rewrite the known history of Viking exploration in North America. But almost immediately, scholars accused the stone of being a hoax. Linguists argued, the runes were too modern. Historians insisted, the described events made no sense. Archaeologists said it was impossible, yet the stone refused to go away. Every time it resurfaced in a museum, the same thing happened. Audiences flocked to see it, and outraged academics publicly attacked the institution. The Smithsonian famously refused to display it. University museums rejected requests to show it. Even Scandinavian heritage organizations distanced themselves. Why? Well, because if a museum even implied the stone was real, they would be accused of promoting pseudoscience and rewriting history for tourism dollars. So here's the twist. In the last 20 years, several linguists and geologists have actually supported parts of its authenticity, including geological weathering on the rune cuts that seems older than any known hoax's lifetime, basically. The debate is so explosive that most major museums refuse to touch it, not because the stone is cursed, but because the conversation around it is. It destroys reputations, it splits communities, it causes bitter academic feuds that get so intense, curators avoid it entirely. Today, the Kensington runestone sits in a small regional museum, the only place willing to handle the political fallout, but major museums, they refuse to display it to this day.
Number 2 on this list is the unlucky mummy. Do not get on a boat if said boat is also carrying burying this mummy. Google Arts and Culture says the unlucky mummy isn't actually a mummy, but the mummy board or coffin lid of a high status woman who lived in around 950 to 900 BCE. Discovered in Thebes in the 1800s, the 4 young Englishmen who first purchased the mummy all died in unfortunate circumstances. Rumors of the curse soon spread, and in the early 20th century, journalist William Thomas Stead wrote an article on the jinxed artifact. Stead went on to be one of the passengers on the doomed Titanic. It's said that he told stories of the curse in the run-up to the disaster, with many believing that the mummy itself caused the ship's watery end. Today, the unlucky mummy is on display in the British Museum. The Titanic was supposed to be unsinkable. Enter in the unlucky mummy, and boom, now the unsinkable ship goes down. Maybe it's a stretch to say that this thing caused the literal Titanic crash, but I can at least guarantee that it probably didn't help. At least this thing is now locked up in a museum very much on land and not connected to any boats that I know of. And number 1 on this list is the Hands Resist Him painting. I'm all about having some cool, groundbreaking art, but this painting definitely crosses the line. The lineup says there is no doubt the painting is disturbing. It shows a young boy standing next to a girl doll with hollow eyes and a sad, downturned mouth. The doll is holding a strange device with wires coming out of it. The eeriest part of the painting are the many disembodied children's hands reaching toward the boy through the glass panels of a door just behind him. But even more disturbing than the painting itself are the stories of what has happened to people who come in contact with it. A few years after the painting was sold, the art critic Henry Seldes died. Then the gallery owner died. Then in 1984, John Marley died. The painting disappeared, not surfacing again until 2000 in a bizarre posting on eBay. The new owners were trying to sell it because they said it was haunted. They claimed the boy and the doll in the picture would fight with each other during the night, terrifying their 4-year-old daughter. They set up a motion sensing camera in the room for 3 nights and claimed they had captured the boy in the picture leaving the frame and coming into the room, apparently fleeing in terror. The literal kid in the painting is leaving. Not freaking cool, guys. My paintings are supposed to be static and not moving, and they definitely aren't supposed to be walking around my home scaring the living bejesus out of me and my family. Apparently, this painting is locked up in a storage locker now, and no one is allowed to see it. Number 5 on this list is the Dybbuk box. This is an evil box that tormented many people and even claimed some lives along the way. Zak Bagans writes, according to Jewish folklore, a Dybbuk is a dark spirit that takes over the bodies of living people and uses them for evil. Legend has it that a Dybbuk can be trapped inside of a box and prevented from causing mischief unless the box is opened, that is. Several years ago, the Dybbuk box came up for sale on eBay. The seller listed a vintage wine cabinet that came from the estate of a woman who survived a World War II concentration camp. The seller, an antique dealer named Kevin Manis, claimed that the first owner's granddaughter was terrified of the box, warning him that her grandmother said it held a Dybbuk. After buying the cabinet, he was plagued by a series of unfortunate events and recurring nightmares of an old hag that would brutally attack him, causing him to wake up with bruises on his body. He also experienced an overpowering stench of cat urine in his home. Tragically, his mother suffered a stroke while opening the box. Not surprisingly, he decided to get rid of it. The box eventually ended up in the hands of Missouri Medical Museum director Jason Haxton, who was skeptical about the powers attributed to the box. He soon changed his mind. After acquiring the box, he began to experience a series of medical maladies, including bleeding eyes and strange rashes. He also began to dream of being attacked by an old hag and would also awake with bruises on his body. Kevin Manis told me that while the box was in Haxton's basement, a man died there and his body was found lying next to the box. He eventually became so unnerved by the box that he reached out to scientists and rabbis who instructed him to build a wooden ark lined with 24 karat gold, place the box inside, and bury it in the ground. Now, this actually wasn't the end of the story for this box. The box was eventually dug up again and then later donated to a museum. This was after it had tormented a few more people, mind you, though. Now it's fully encased encased in a glass covering, but even that doesn't stop the evil spirit from coming after people. Many people who have visited this box have reported having serious episodes in the room while they're looking at it. Whatever spirit is trapped inside this box, it is clearly an extremely powerful one. The box remains on display at the museum, but I wouldn't recommend going to check it out if I was you.
The shadow doll that visits you in your dreams. Now, the shadow doll doesn't just scare you when you look at it, it follows you right into your sleep. This doll, once kept in the Warrens Occult Museum, is considered one of the darkest objects they ever handled. The story goes that this eerie figure was constructed by something deep into black magic rituals. It was pieced together using real human bones and animal parts, including bird claws, and designed to channel pure malevolence. Now, its stitched face and lifeless eyes were meant to frighten, but the true terror was its alleged power. People who came in contact with the shadow doll often claimed it entered their dreams. But these weren't just nightmares, they were violent, like really crazy experiences. Victims reported being asphyxiated in their sleep by an invisible force. Some said they woke up with scratches and bruises as if the dream had manifested physically. Now, the Warrens believed the doll was used in rituals to curse enemies, delivering night terrors that could eventually stop someone's heart. Now, what makes this doll especially disturbing is that even a photograph of it is said to hold a lot of power. Lorraine Warren warned that simply gazing too long at the doll's image could invite its presence into your subconscious. Now, this isn't just folklore. I mean, the fear was so widespread that when it was displayed in their museum, it had to be kept inside a locked glass case, bound in protective prayers. One account involved a young man who mocked the idea of the doll. After looking at it closely, he began suffering from night terrors so severe he actually refused to sleep. Days later, he then suffered a heart attack and passed away in his 30s. Doctors couldn't explain it, but the Warrens were convinced the shadow doll had claimed yet another victim. The doll remains one of the few objects that the Warrens said they couldn't neutralize, but only contain. The conjuring mirror that showed something looking back. Now, not all mirrors show your reflection or just your reflection. Some, like the conjuring mirror, show something far darker. This object came into the Warrens' possession after being used in a ritual of catopatromancy, I think I'm saying that right, an ancient form of divination that involves summoning spirits through mirrors. Now, the mirror was reportedly used by occult practitioners who believed they could contact the deceased. Now, instead, they unleashed something terrifying. Witnesses described the mirror as alive, reflecting faces that weren't actually in the room, sometimes with twisted, decayed features. People who stare too long into it often reported losing a sense of time in general, or just standing motionless for hours as if they were hypnotized. Others swore that after looking into the mirror, dark shapes began to appear in their homes, following them into corners, watching silently. One chilling account involved a man who claimed he saw his own corpse staring back at him from the glass. Now, days later, he actually suffered a fatal accident eerily similar to what he had described. Another visitor swore she saw hands pressing out from the inside of the mirror as if something was trapped within it, desperate to escape. The Warrens labeled the conjuring mirror as one of the most cursed items in their collection. They warned that using it was like opening a doorway that you just couldn't shut. Even Ed Warren admitted he refused to stare into it for fear of bringing something back with him. Now, at the museum, the mirror had to be covered in a very heavy cloth whenever not on display. I mean, Lorraine insisted that even brief exposure could infect a person with lingering paranormal energy. To this day, many people refuse to even look at photographs of it. That's how scary it is. The satanic idol unearthed in the Connecticut woods. Now, in 1991, the Warrens discovered one of their most disturbing objects, not in a house, but buried deep in the woods. It was a crude, hand-carved idol shaped like a horned figure standing less than 2 feet tall. Now, the idol was believed to have been used in satanic rituals, and according to the Warrens, it carried a very dangerous aura of evil. Local police had discovered it after reports of strange animal mutilations and cult activity in the Connecticut forest. When the Warrens were called in, they immediately sensed it wasn't just a statue. Ed described the air around it as charged with something oppressive, like the forest itself was basically holding its breath. People who touched the idol often reported sudden sickness, dizziness, or even sometimes violent thoughts. Some became physically aggressive, lashing out for no reason at all. Now, Lorraine claims she saw shadowy figures circling the idol during their investigation, vanishing whenever she tried to focus on them. But the most chilling story comes from a man who accidentally stumbled across the idol before it was taken away. He later described hearing voices whispering his name in the woods, urging him to come a little closer. When he refused, he felt himself shoved violently to the ground, although no one was actually there. Now, afterward, he suffered months of torment. Paranormal activity followed him home, with objects flying off the shelves and dark figures appearing at his bedside. The idol was eventually locked away in the Warrens Occult Museum, sealed under prayer, and never ever allowed to be displayed without strict spiritual protection. Ed and Lorraine believed it was connected to ongoing satanic activity and warned that its purpose was never benign. It was created as a vessel of worship for dark forces. Even now, it remains one of the most mysterious artifacts they ever collected. So which haunted object would scare you the most if you were in close proximity to it? The cursed wedding dress of Anna Baker. Imagine being so heartbroken in life that your spirit clings to a wedding dress for eternity. That's exactly what happened with Anna Baker in the 1800s, and her gown is still said to be haunted to this day. Anna came from a very wealthy Pennsylvania family. She fell in love with a steelworker and planned to marry him, even buying a lavish white wedding gown for the big day, but her father, Elias Baker, forbid the marriage. Now, Anna was forced to live out her single and bitter life, and she passed away never wearing her dream dress. But here's where the horror begins. The dress that's now displayed at the Baker Mansion Museum in Altoona seems alive. Visitors have sworn the dress moves inside its sealed glass case. Sometimes late at night, it is seen swaying gently as if being twirled by a bride who never got her wedding dance. Other times, it thrashes violently, almost as though an unseen force is raging against the injustice of Anna's stolen love. Local reports say that in the 1970s, security guards at the museum refused to do overnight shifts in the room with the dress. One even quit on the spot, claiming he heard sobbing and banging from the case in the middle of the night. Others said they saw a very shadowy woman figure, reflected in the glass, staring back at them with hollow eyes. The Warrens, though never the original keepers of the gown, investigated it as part of their haunted objects cases. They claimed the energy surrounding the dress wasn't residual, it was interactive. Lorraine Warren once described it as a restless spirit refusing to let go of earthly pain.
Number 3 on this list is the Maori warrior masks. Now, these warrior masks hold a curse that won't affect everyone, just a small portion of people, specifically women who are soon to be expecting children. The Occult Museum says New Zealand's Maori warriors are part of an ancient tribe who would carve unique masks when it was time for battle. When a man died in the mask, it was believed that his soul would remain trapped in the mask they were wearing. Although their mythology does not dictate that any harm is done by the trapped souls, the presence of the masks has a strange and sometimes fatal effect on pregnant women. Women who are expecting often experience complications when they come in contact with the masks. It's unknown why this phenomenon occurs, but the museum that holds the remaining masks posts a warning that pregnant women should stay away. The literal museum is out here warning pregnant women not to come. That's how you know that this thing's seriously dangerous. Like whenever a business or enterprise does something that's actually gonna lose them money, that's when you have my attention. Considering they just lost an entire demographic of people, I'm now listening and buying into this curse. The paranormal investigators who aren't pregnant have taken a look at this, and they're having a hard time getting to the bottom of it. Some people have suggested that the Maori tribe thought that pregnant women were taboo, but that also doesn't really make any sense, because then how would they have repopulated their tribe? Regardless of why it is the way that it is, just know that if you are expecting, that's not the right time to take a look at these masks. Number 2 on this list is the Surrey ghost car. So this is a weird one and definitely something that paranormal investigators are a bit spooked by. List 25 says crashes are common on the A3 highway in England, so it looked like a routine matter when police in Surrey received calls that a car had veered off the A3 with its headlights blazing. But when officers went to investigate, they found no signs of the reported vehicle. However, a further search revealed chilling results. Just 60 feet from the reported crash scene, and buried in twisted undergrowth, was the remains of a wrecked car containing a decomposing body of a young man who, as the police estimated, had crashed there 5 months earlier. Therefore, what the witnesses reported might have been a ghostly apparition of the original car. Now, how on earth does that make any sense at all? You know what, let me answer that for you. It doesn't. First off, how did no one notice this car earlier? And then, what was that ghostly apparition that had a car veer off the road? Paranormal investigators are all scared of this one because who knows what type of effect this ghost car could have on your vehicle. And finally, number 1 on this list is the cursed mirror. This mirror isn't just cursed with a bad reflection, it's gonna show you something a lot worse than just you with a little bedhead or something. Instablog says, if you've seen Oculus, then chances are already you're scared of mirrors. And let's not even go back to the time when Bloody Mary was a whole thing. But if these creepy images of mirrors in the horror genre weren't enough, here's a real object which is most likely cursed. In St. Francisville, Louisiana, there's a plantation house which is one of the most haunted houses in America. Inside the house is this mirror, a cursed mirror. Legend goes that the plantation slave brutally killed the owner of the house, named Sarah Woodruff, and her daughters inside the house. Ever since then, they remain trapped inside the mirror. Visitors often report sights of handprints on the mirror, along with some unexplainable strange marks. And the classic haunting is also rumored: figures dressed in white, old-fashioned attire, visible on the other side of the mirror. Some people who have been exposed to this mirror for longer than they should say that these figures in white follow them around too, that they've even seen them appear in other mirrors outside of the plantation, and 1 or 2 of them have talked about how they've seen them outside of a mirror entirely, as if they were standing like right in front of them. It seems like the longer that you're exposed to this, the more of an impact the curse will have on you. Kind of like, I don't know, radiation poisoning or something like that, where the time you spend among the toxin, that's gonna hurt you more. Obviously, because of this, paranormal investigators don't want to spend too long investigating this mirror. A short stint doing some research probably won't hurt you, although it will definitely give you a scare considering you're gonna see the figures on the other side. But extended exposure is where the real danger lies with this cursed item.
Next up, the Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond is one of the most famous diamonds in the world, with a history dating back to the 17th century. The diamond was actually discovered in India in 1673, and it was stolen during the French Revolution. The diamond was originally part of a Hindu statue's eye. The Hope Diamond, a stone as alluring as it is mysterious, is a major draw for all who go to see it. Its discovery brought about terrible fates, though, for seemingly everyone who came into contact with it, leading many to believe that the gem was cursed. And because of this, for centuries, it was believed to be so, with many of its owners meeting very tragic ends. The man who found the Hope Diamond, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, was said to be torn apart by wild dogs after stealing the diamond from the Hindu statue. Now, by 1908, the Washington Post was claiming that the Hope Diamond has brought trouble to all who have owned it, and followed up with several similar articles, heightening the bizarre and morbid stories attached to the precious jewel. Now, in 1911, the New York Times printed a very fascinating and completely unsubstantiated list of the fates of the stone's, previous owners, which makes it a very unsettling read. However, in 2010, a team of scientists from the Smithsonian Institution conducted an analysis of the diamond, including, the structure, the history, all of that jazz. Now, their findings revealed that the Hope Diamond is not cursed, but rather its owners have been victims of circumstance and bad luck. Questionable. I'm wondering how they concluded that. Like, how do you get proof that something isn't cursed, right? Anyway, the diamond's history is marked by a series of just unfortunate events, including thefts, and betrayal, which have contributed to its reputation as a cursed object. As Dr. Jeffrey Post, curator of the Smithsonian's National Gem and Mineral Collection, noted, the Hope Diamond is a remarkable object, but its history is more a reflection of human nature than any supernatural force. The large diamond actually weighs about 45.52 carats. That is after undergoing a few cuts. Its original weight was marked at 112 carats. This weight is substantial, especially when you consider that this diamond isn't a traditional colorless diamond, but it has a deep blue color, though no one is actually certain of its exact location. The large diamond faced its first cut in 1168 when it was purchased by King Louis XIV of France and crafted into one of his crown jewels. It worked its way down through the family until Louis XV and his wife Marie Antoinette had it. When the couple were beheaded in the French Revolution and the royal treasure, pilfered, the Hope Diamond was lost, and its cursed reputation then took root. The general public can view the Hope Diamond in the Harry Winston Room in the Hall of Geology, Gems, and Minerals of the Natural History Museum of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. That was a mouthful, so if you're ever in Washington and want to catch a glimpse, go for it.
Number 4 on this list is the Screaming Skull. Last I checked, if there is no meat on the bone, then a skull shouldn't be screaming. That's kind of what's going down with this one extremely haunted skull in Burton Agnes Hall, England. Instablog says, what if you touch an object and then you hear terrible, deafening screams? That is precisely what happens when you touch this skull at an Elizabethan manor in England. Burton Agnes Hall is the house of Catherine Ann Griffith, who was brutally murdered by numerous bullies in 1620. Her skull still rests inside the house. Why? Because whenever somebody tried to take it out of the house, what happened next terrified them to the bone. People who have tried to touch or disturb that skull have reported seeing a scary ghost walk in and utter a deafening scream. This scared the people so much that they actually ran out of the house in terror. If you're up for a scary challenge, then this might be your chance to prove your mettle to the world, but for the weak-hearted ones, it's wise to stay away. And yeah, guys, I agree with that article right there. Probably best not to mess with this thing. A bunch of paranormal investigators won't even go here anymore. If a bunch of paranormal investigators think that this area is too scary for them, then sorry guys, I'm tapping out. It's way too scary for me too.
Number 3, the Museum of Death. Well, that's a cheery name, isn't it? You have to imagine with a name like the Museum of Death, there's something suspicious going on. Nope, not particularly. It's owned by a very cheery couple who built it in 1995 in the city's first mortuary. Their intended mission is to make people happy to be alive, which actually is very terrifying and ominous in a sort of Jigsaw, cherish your life sort of way. It's intended as a commemoration of life, just with a heavy focus on the last stage of life. It serves as a grim look at death, although the owners insist they don't want to scare anyone, but they're not trying to sanitize death either. Instead, they choose to show the reality of it, all the grisly details and all. As such, the museum is a site of controversy for quite some time, as some people find the exhibits a bit extreme. Some people go so far as to say it's tasteless, with footage of autopsies being shown and a collection of all sorts of relics from some of the evilest of evil criminals, Jeffrey Dahmer to name one. The museum boasts an impressive collection of bones, skulls, coffins, ancient morticians' tools and execution equipment, and all manner of macabre curios guaranteed to leave you feeling uneasy. Now, it should be noted, the museum is absolutely not at all for those with a squeamish stomach, and really should be reserved for those with a real dark interest in the dead. Number 2. Ed and Lorraine's Occult Museum. Now, it's hard to talk about a list of cursed museums full of the devil's objects without mentioning the Warrens' legendary Museum of the Paranormal. It almost goes without saying. It's probably one of the most famous haunted collections on the globe. Ed and Lorraine were storied demonologists, and the chances are extremely good. If you've even seen 2 videos by us, you've probably heard about them a million times. But it's still one of the coolest museums of cursed objects on the planet and is packed to the gills. It would be just wrong to leave it out of this list. Although the pair have since passed a while ago, the museum is now upheld by their son-in-law, Tony Spera, who carries on the mantle for them. The museum sits in a large shed just outside the Warrens' former property. I guess it's best to keep the evil close to home. The museum houses all sorts of dark souvenirs from the Warrens' storied past and is a veritable who's who for Conjuring and Warren fans. You can get a chance to get up close and personal with the real Annabelle, snap a selfie with her if you dare, or take a look at the cursed shadow doll made of real human teeth and bird feathers, or perhaps a satanic idol retrieved from the woods that caused Lorraine to become violently ill when brought in. If the Warrens were on the case, then they've brought something back sitting on that shelf. Mr. Spera blesses everyone who visits the museum before entry, just in case there's any residual evil hanging around in the air you might be bringing in. A priest comes by too to bless all the items, keep them safe. The museum is currently closed to visitors, but Spera is working hard to have this piece of paranormal legacy reopened once again. Number 1, Zak Bagans' Haunted Museum. Now, if you're looking for the cream of the crop, if you're looking for the peak of the haunted museum circuit, well, then no one has worked harder for that distinction than Zak Bagans, the esteemed paranormal investigator and ghost adventure star. Zak's collection started when he was a young boy, when he would scour garage sales with his mom in hopes of finding strange occult objects. I wonder how often he was finding occult objects at garage sales. Since then, a lifelong obsession would eventually turn into one of the most impressive hoards of spooky finds under the sun. The museum is in Las Vegas, built on a property in 1938 that has been said to be home to dark spirits who pass there, and their energy remains behind. Before becoming a museum, it's rumored that it used to be home to secret orders that would perform dark rituals. Among some of Zak's more treasured haunted items are the Dybbuk box, a wine rack said to be home to the world's most malevolent poltergeist, a possessed rocking chair from the famous Glatzel case, inspiring The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, and tons of relics from the world's most sinister criminals like Ed Gein or Ted Bundy. Now, it goes without saying that a building replete with haunted items is a melting pot for spirits and haunting sightings. The tour warns you and asks you to sign a waiver before entering that you're knowingly putting yourself at risk of endangerment from unknown forces. Now, staff at the museum have reported everything from seeing strange lights, shadows, hearing peculiar noises, feeling unwell around certain objects, all the way to real extremes like seeing mysterious figures and cloaked, robed people at night. If you're feeling up for it and you want to feel like a paranormal investigator yourself, the museum also offers solo tours at night with nothing but a flashlight to guide you. Just be aware of what you're going up against. Number 5, the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Occult. Owned by a couple, Dana and Greg Newkirk, who realized one day that they had a passion for the paranormal and a collection worth boasting about, they opened a museum with the intention of getting people to experience the paranormal as close as they could. The thinking being that we don't usually get to experience it up close, this museum provides a one-of-a-kind horror experience. Some of the gems of the collection include a piece of the real-life Amityville horror house, the infamous haunting, or how about the Catskills Crone, a terrifying hand-carved idol of a human with nails jammed into the eyes, allegedly tied to a supernatural entity called the Crone. The Restless painting, a cursed painting notorious for flinging itself across rooms, or if that's all not enough for you, perhaps the terrifying begging bowl, an ancient Tibetan offering made out of a human skull, designed for rituals where the offerer would feed the skull wine, bread, and blood in exchange to temper the raging spirits of demons for good fortune. Now, there's no question the Traveling Museum is one of the most unique collections on the planet, and lucky for you, it's always moving. But if you're looking for good scares, you don't need to travel anywhere, because you already know the best scares are coming to you twice a day, every day at Top 5 Scary. Stay subscribed and stay scared. Number 4, Zapis Museum of the Paranormal. Now, for most of us, we probably wouldn't think of mixing cursed items in with the decor. I wouldn't want to bring that dark energy home with me. I get enough bad vibes as it is. Well, for John Zapis, he welcomes it with open arms. What kind of person would want to do that? Well, if I told you that Zapis was the nephew of Ed and Lorraine Warren, would it make a bit more sense? Feeling inspired by his aunt and uncle, Zapis too became a collector of the paranormal and an investigator of the unknown. Must run in the family. He worked alongside his aunt and uncle on several of their cases where he was tutored by them in the ways of the paranormal, leading him to become a respected hunter in his own right. Following in their footsteps, he opened his own museum of his own demonic relics. His collection includes souvenirs from the cases he's worked on in the past, much like his relatives. Some highlights of the collection include a black cast iron human skull that was discovered inside an unnamed political family's house, a black idol that was used for satanic rituals, a sword that was apparently used to conjure black magic, and a whole lot more. Now don't worry, everything Zapis taken in is safe, it's been cleansed, and he's very careful with his vetting process. Apparently anything too cursed for him to feel safe bringing into the museum, he throws into a body of water. So just be careful swimming around the museum, I suppose. Now the museum is currently closed, but Zapis is searching for a new location to open up again soon. Hopefully somewhere with some nice thick walls. Keep all that evil energy in check.
Here's something you don't see every day, or at least I don't. How about we try on a haunted bra for size? Not actually, you weirdos, just in theory. It's one of the weirdest, frightening, but maybe one of the least sanitary items posted on eBay on today's list. Alright, picture this folks. A one-time used bra, white and kinda ratty, and designed for a woman with a 32A bust. But it's also packing some major spirit power, or so claims Tanya Rose, the woman selling it. But this isn't a second-hand bra, it is a third-hand bra, because the listing claims it belonged to a deceased woman, one who lived a life with a lot of amorous adventures and partying before she met an untimely end. So why would you want it? Because according to the seller, the spirit of this crazy lady never quite left. Her spirit is still hanging around in her bra, and anyone who wears it will inherit her success in the romantic world. Get ready for a big increase in the number of admirers and gifts. But it may not have wound up with a woman, because it supposedly has another ability. So if you're gonna put a lit white candle near the bra, the spirit of the woman will appear. But if you're gonna place a red candle, the owner's gonna come back and greet you with a very sensual encounter with the spirit world. And while this is terrifying at all, it kind of reminds me of another haunted bra from pop culture. Anybody remember George the Bra from iCarly? Does anybody remember George the Bra from iCarly? So he was this large pink bra who told ghost stories to anybody watching, and he made his first appearance on an iCarly sketch in the episode I Give Away a Car, and also appeared at the beginning of I Saved Your Life. Heck, at one time there's even a segment on the actual website, iCarly.com, that was dedicated to his stories. So I guess he's not the only haunted bra anymore. Okay folks, we're gonna move on to a different bust, object. Sorry, it was an easy joke, and I've spent way too much time lately around folks who have mastered the groaning style of humor. The genesis of this haunting creation is intertwined with the tragic demise of its creator, William. Crafting sculptures from unhardened clay was his passion, a pursuit that met an untimely end on the day he was crushed to death in a work-related accident at the brickyard. The statue, a product of that fateful day, stood as a spectral relic, a tangible link between the artist's final moments and the unknown afterlife. A twist in the tale comes as a fellow laborer, bearing witness to the aftermath of the tragedy, laid eyes on the forlorn statue at the job site the following day. The decision to take it home marks the inception of a series of unsettling events. Initially dormant, the statue's dormant malevolence sprang to life when it was unearthed from its storage confines and proudly displayed in the den. Now the den, once a sanctuary, because we all love a good cozy space, transformed into an oppressive space, laden with an unexplained heaviness that permeated the air. The mundane act of doors slamming of their own accord became an eerie symphony, with the culprit, upon investigation, revealing wide open portals into the unknown. Nearby decorations, juxtaposed with the malevolent sculpture, met their demise in spontaneous acts of shattering. The inanimate bust, anchored in the physical realm, defied the laws of, well, everything. It exhibited a will of its own, orchestrating a macabre ballet as it pivoted to face the wall without even the slightest human intervention. The surreal crescendo reached its peak when a dark shadow or mist, an elusive apparition, materialized in said den, heightening the spectral ambiance. Terrified by the unfolding supernatural saga, the owner was like, okay, let's get rid of this thing, I can't do it anymore. Desperation and fear impelled him to beseech a friend to orchestrate the artifact's exodus from his life, if you will. The friend, perhaps understanding the gravity of the situation, turned to eBay. I feel like Christian Borle when I say that. Thrusting the haunted statue into the labyrinthine corridors of online auctions, leaving its paranormal legacy for a new, unwitting custodian to unravel. And people wonder why young folks aren't buying random art to display in their homes anymore. Seriously. Alrighty everybody, we're gonna end today with some of my favorite haunted items in the whole wide world, haunted dolls. Since they're sadly a bit of a cliche, I figured it was best to save them until the end of our time, so I didn't risk anybody getting bored right off the bat, and so I wouldn't be tempted to turn today into a top 5 scary dolls for sale. Granted, I might still do that, to be determined. The doll that mostly caught my attention today was this beautiful Anne of Green Gables doll. With her copper braids, dark green dress, straw hat, and porcelain skin, she'd fit in really nicely amongst my personal collection. But this doll, located in Windsor, Ontario, came with a picture of her supposed spirit. The description says, "This is not a joke, she is very active." Now, I already own a couple of demon dolls, so maybe I don't want to mess with too many spirits. The seller claims that the doll was purchased at a garage sale 20 years ago and has moved positions on its own. And it can be yours for a mere $60 plus shipping, which is a steal if you ask me. I was performing at an oddities market recently, and the haunted dolls at that event were going for a premium. Mostly because in a crowd like that, it's pretty easy to find out if the item in question is a fake. Oh, you don't believe me? Okay, well let's see. We've got this event. It was run by a world-renowned mind reader who owns one of the most spirited dolls I've ever been in the presence of. If you've heard of Walt, yeah, his owner. Another one of the vendors was an extremely experienced tarot reader who can call BS in an instant. And hey, I was also there, and I could tell pretty quickly if a doll has a mind of its own or not after owning a couple of gals with, personalities if I'm being polite. I've mentioned a couple of times, but if you don't know anything about my cursed dolls, I do recommend pausing this video and watching the one I did on haunted dolls you've never heard about, where I did a big deep dive into my collection and my friend Mysterion's collection. So long story short, haunted dolls at events like that are the real thing. If Anne with an E wasn't creepy enough for you though, back in 2021, a doll from Sault Ste. Marie named Carini has apparently been heard saying her name out loud and even moves around sometimes. And moves around objects. The seller has added a disclaimer that you might not witness the paranormal activity described, so don't be disappointed if she behaves like the inanimate object that she is. And that's the thing with a lot of, demon dolls. It depends on who they're around and if they want to or not. And since I'm on a tangent anyways, there was another nightmare doll that caught my eye because she reminds me of my own kissy baby doll. Now this doll might look like any other, but according to the seller, it's pretty cursed. The seller, who specializes in selling paranormal items that people don't want anymore, says the doll's owner bought it at an antique shop and was told that it was cursed, but the seller used a lot of words that the gal didn't know, so she's like, you know what, it'll come home with me, whatever, I'll take care of it. So soon after, whenever she would open the doll that it came in or touch the doll, she would suffer from terrifying nightmares of shadow people. This continued for several months until her son took it from her to sell it, and it sold for only $17.49, which, once again, steal of a deal. And that brings us to the end of our time, and I think I'm gonna stick to getting my haunted items from markets where I know the sources. Besides, that way I save big time on the shipping costs and the risk. Alright, have you ever visited somewhere where you were sure a painting was following you with its eyes? How about a photo that just gave off bad vibes? So one such item, a seemingly innocent photograph of a distinguished Victorian gentleman named Martin, emerged from the shadows of a dusty attic, akin to a forgotten relic from a long time past. Initially, it graced the owner's display, an intriguing conversation starter lifted from the sepia-toned pages of a forgotten family album. See, my apartment conversation starter is the tapestry of the popular Barbie movie universe character, Bibble, that takes up an entire wall of my living room. But hey, to each their own. Alright, back to the important stuff today. The passage of time is about to unravel an unsettling narrative woven around this seemingly innocent little picture. The anomaly wasn't visual, but more something you could smell, like an unsettling scent that clung to the photograph like an ethereal residue. The aroma, a mysterious blend of scents by the way, wafted from the each photograph, a scent symphony that defied the logic of temporal confinement. We've got roses dancing with the fragrance of burning embers, and the sharp essence of wood mingling with the air. The irregularity of these apparitions painted an eerie aura around the photograph, a scent-based enigma that was like, yo, what the heck? As the unsettling fragrances ebbed and flowed, a decision was made to reach out to the spectral presence suspected to be intertwined with the photograph's history. So what did they do? They grabbed a Ouija board. Yeah, the age-old conduit to the supernatural. It became the intermediary between the living and the spirit that was lingering between the photograph and the photograph's frame. The encounter was shockingly devoid of hostility. I say shockingly because hey, if there's one thing I will constantly preach against, it's the use of a Ouija board in any sense. It's like a telephone where you don't know who or what is going to answer and you can't trust anything. And what do you know? The whole household aura, it went from being great to being not so great. The paranormal curtain lifted, revealing a surge in unexplained phenomena that whispered of a restless energy tethered to said photograph. The decision was made. This photograph, now a vessel for the unknown, found itself exiled from the confines of the home, making its way into the hands of a collector. Where did the damn thing wind up? That I can't tell you, but I don't particularly want to come across it anytime soon. So if you bought a weird sepia picture from eBay, burn it, stick it in a trunk, I don't care, bury it for all I know. Well, we might as well stick with the demented artwork theme we've got going so far, and move on to what is known as the haunted eBay painting, or the Hands Resistum. Based on a real-life photograph of the artist from around the time he was years old, this painting, a spectral dance of a young boy, a doll, and disembodied hands, traces its origins to an abandoned brewery, where a California couple stumbled upon its eerie presence. Soon after introducing the painting into the sanctum of their home, the couple, besieged by an unfolding narrative of the uncanny, decided to part ways with their newfound possession. So where did they go? Good old eBay! So they presented their artifact to the world, accompanied by a cautionary note that echoed with an ominous whisper. This painting may or may not possess supernatural powers that could impact or change your life. Good marketing or a genuine worry? Now let's see. The essence of their warning found roots in alleged nocturnal skirmishes between the painted boy and girl, an unsettling manifestation that their daughter ultimately revealed. As if extracted from the surreal realms of a ghost story, the advertisement carried whispers of the boy stepping beyond the confines of the canvas, an occurrence that served as the catalyst for their decision to relinquish their spectral acquisition. The curious drama surrounding this haunted masterpiece reached its crescendo when it found a new custodian in none other than Kim Smith, a gallery owner hailing from Michigan. The gavel of the digital auction pronounced a sum of $1,025, sealing the fate of the Hands Resistum. But the enigma surrounding this painting refused to be contained within the pixels of online transactions, in a revelation that either deepened the mystique or surprised In a revelation to either deepen the mystique or surprise nobody, depending on how you look at things, Kim Smith disclosed that her inbox bore witness to a procession of emails, testimonials from individuals claiming visceral reactions just by looking at a photograph of the painting. Reports of repulsion and physical illness became the postscript to the tale of the haunted eBay painting. This ordinary artifact turned conduit to the spectral, illustrating that even in the realm of e-commerce, the line between the tangible and the ethereal can kind of blur, and not in a good way. Now, if you feel ill after my talking about this painting today, please let us know in the comments so we can do a 10-part experiment on everybody's psyche. I'm kidding. Don't you trust me?
Number 3. The Holy Souls of Purgatory. Purgatory, in Catholic belief, is kind of like a giant waiting room while the upper management figures out just where exactly they're going to find a good spot that's best for you. Well, that's simplifying it a bit, obviously. The soul is thought to be stranded in purgatory until it atones for its earthly sins, but you can hurry the process up just a little bit if your loved ones back on earth are praying for you. In the back of the Chiesa del Sacro Cuore del Suffragio de Piccolo Museo del Purgatorio, or Museum of the Holy Souls in Purgatory, holds a collection of relics that have been singed by the hands of the souls of those trapped in purgatory. These burned handprints are believed to be the souls trying to communicate that their loved ones need to pray harder. I don't know about you, but I would definitely start praying real hard if burned handprints started showing up in my books, but I would be praying for an exorcist, more likely. Now, this is kind of interesting, and I didn't even know this. Purgatory isn't even mentioned directly in the Bible, but the concept of purgatory dates back to the 11th century. This notion that trapped souls needed to be freed came from a story told to the Abbot Odilo of Cluny by a monk returning from the Holy Land. He told this story about how this ship had been wrecked, that he'd been cast ashore on a mysterious island, and a hermit who lived on the island related his own story of a chasm from which screams of trapped souls and demonic flames rose and ravaged. He told of how the demons would complain about losing souls when your loved ones would pray for their behalf. So November 2nd was established as All Souls Day. Everybody, all the souls. Where it was believed that prayers by the living could help get all of those trapped dead in purgatory loose. You know, it's kind of like that one episode of The Simpsons where the town comes together to get Bart out of the well. It's a similar enough concept, you know. They sang a song, you pray, souls get out, Bart gets out, pretty much one and the same. This particular collection of burned relics in particular, though, was collected when Victor Jouet, the missionary behind the collection, experienced a fire that burned part of the original suffragio, leaving behind a scorched image of a face that he believed was a trapped soul. Now, again, just me personally, but if I saw a face burned into one of my possessions, I would move entirely, call an exorcist, be putting salt circles around my feet for the rest of my life, but I appreciate what he did too. Number 2, the Santa Maria della Concezione crypts. Whew, my Italian is not as good as it should be. Inside the Santa Maria della Concezione crypts, as many as 4,000 friars lie here. Well, lie is probably the wrong word, as they hang here is probably a more accurate description, as these 4,000 bodies are hanging from the rafters, decorating the space of every inch of the church. Now, it might seem a bit grim or beautiful, depending on your twisted point of view. We're a scary channel, I ain't gonna judge you. There's a certain chic to it. But I wouldn't be surprised if they have to spend a few hundred a month on keeping air fresheners and incense just running all the time there. Now, you might reasonably be wondering, hey, why do they hang bones from the wall like they're throwing a Halloween party and no one went to the store to get actual decorations and they had to make do with what they had? Well, they're not just festive. The practice dates back from the 16th century when the Capuchin friars, not named after the monkey but because of the hoods they wore, left the friary of St. Bonaventure to come live at Santa Maria della Concezione. They were ordered by the Pope's brother at the time to bring the remains of deceased friars with them to their new home so that all the Capuchins could lie together. With a huge amount of bodies on their hands, the brothers decided to get a little fun with it and decorate the walls of the crypts with their bones as a way of reminding them that death comes for all of them. Surely there's a slightly easier way to remind you of the ever-present mortality that hangs over us than literally hanging a bunch of pelvises to the buttresses, but what do I know? A plaque in the crypt reads, "What you are now, we once were. What we are now, you shall be." Which is grim. No way around it. The crypt contains a little bit of everything inside you. Crypt of skulls, lovely load of leg bones, and the star of the show is definitely the crypt of pelvises. Oh, make sure you get a photo in there. Make sure you grab a fridge magnet from the Pelvis Room gift shop. And number 1, St. John the Baptist's many heads. They say 2 heads are better than 1, which might be proof of what a great man St. John the Baptist is, because no one can seem to agree how many heads the guy actually had. The saint's head was supposedly brought back from Constantinople in 1206 by the crusader Wallen de Satan, but it seems this happened more than a few times, since 3 different shrines across the globe all claim to have the original head of St. John the Baptist, and no one's able to clear this up anytime soon. St. John was a forerunner of Jesus Christ, and the New Testament says that John was beheaded by Herod around 28 CE as a punishment for criticizing his recent divorce. Yeesh. Paintings of the beheading depicted on a silver platter, which is a nice way to get a severed head, I think. I don't know if I ever want a head delivered to me, but if I had to, I would want it on a silver platter. According to the legend, there really was a silver platter his head was delivered on that made its way to Constantinople or Istanbul, but was sold by the Crusaders in order to pay for his travels back. John's head was on display in the Amiens Cathedral up until the French Revolution, where they confiscated all church treasures, and it would eventually return home in 1816, then going all the way back to Rome from Greek monks who brought it to a shrine decorated with beautiful stained glass, one panel depicting the head on a silver platter. You think you wouldn't want to remember that. Well, here's where the trouble comes in. A German museum in Munich also takes great pride in having St. John's head. The Munich Residence Museum contains a bunch of other holy relics, but their most prized is the alleged St. John's head, although no one really knows how it got there. This skull is wrapped in cloth and heavily interred with gems. Now 2 would be impressive, but St. John's got a crowd worth of heads because he's got 3. His last head can be found in Damascus, Syria in the Umayyad Mosque, one of the oldest and largest mosques in the world. This relic, also not exposed, wrapped in a cloth, and is currently located in a shrine dedicated to the saint. So will the real John the Baptist please stand up? Or do all 3 of these heads actually really belong to him, and he had to be beheaded 3 times for it to take? You know what, don't answer that. I'm not sure if that's something I really want to know.
We're kicking off today with the Agnes porcelain doll that's been haunting its owners over in Scotland. Yvonne Hydes is an events manager for the Scottish Ghost Company and has organized paranormal investigations across the country. And during one such event at Proven Hall, she received an old-looking doll from one of the members. After taking it home and placing it in her spare room, a number of strange incidents occurred on the property. So we do have some video footage today of the absolute chaos that was happening in Yvonne's house. The bizarre series of paranormal activity culminated in an investigation in a park where Yvonne is adamant she saw the creepy doll blink. She told Glasgow Live one of the members' friends had brought the doll to him after being on holiday in the north of England. They bought it from some charity shop. And she tends to be the recipient of a lot of weird things. Most of the dolls she has in her possession are all hand-me-downs, and they don't bother her. But that night, with that doll, it was making her feel uncomfortable. So she had mentioned her friend David, who works as a medium, absolutely hates this doll. When our lovely witness brought it home, he was like, I'm gonna keep that in the garage. And that made her a little worried. Suddenly, the Cocker Spaniel in the house took a dislike to the doll being in the room. It started barking and shaking. And if you know, animals tend to be the most susceptible to weird spirits. One day our witness came downstairs and saw one of her really heavy lamps sitting in the middle of the living room. Her son came in and was like, hey, are we moving stuff around? Nope. More objects were being moved around each morning and weird electrical things started to happen. Turns out they have like an electrical vacuum that is programmed to come out at 10:30 each night. Well, she was turning off the lights one morning and it like went out and did its own thing. So she looked on the website and it hadn't been registered as being active at the time. So when David took his turn bringing the doll home throughout the night, he also reported knocking and footsteps that just didn't make sense. So the Scottish Ghost Company took this doll to a park to investigate it. They did a little live stream on TikTok, on Facebook, they tied a red light around the doll's neck with hopes of allowing the spirit to transfigure its face onto the doll. Well, during the process, Yvonne and a few others on live stream were like, yeah, that doll blinked. So it was then up to the team if they wanted to bury it or keep it. They decided to keep it, so I'm sure I'll do an updated video in like a year and it's gonna be everything awful. A spooked man believes his flat is haunted after he filmed a lot of objects moving by themselves. So this bizarre video, which was captured at the man's home in Fayetteville in North Carolina, shows a number of items that are just throwing themselves off a kitchen counter. So the video was posted on Reddit and a lot of folks were like, okay, maybe there was like a piece of string, maybe we were just like doing some really great magic. And I was also kind of skeptical. But then I saw everything moving. The papers were fluttering, and I was gonna be like, okay, fraud with a fan. But then the toaster went flying, and I was like, yeah, nope, that's legit. So the unnamed filmmaker who posted the video said that they came home to a couple of things out of place and decided to review the footage, and it scared the hell out of them, which, like, valid. Apparently they're like, yeah, maybe I was being paranoid, but they could feel something or someone looking at them. And they were seriously considering breaking their lease to move. So I checked the comments on the original Reddit post, and the man claimed there was like a couple of things that happened in the bathroom and the living room. Thankfully nothing in the bedroom, primarily just the kitchen. And he's like, yeah, I've lived here close to a year. This started like 2 months ago. Now, granted, as of the time of me telling you this was like 7 years ago, and the original post was deleted, so I don't have an update, but I'm hoping the guy did break his lease and got the heck out of there.
Number 5. St. Clair's fingernails and her hair. Now, some people say that fingernails and hair continue to grow after the body passes away. This is commonly repeated, but actually not true, because rather it's the skin around the fingernails retracting that gives the illusion that the fingernails are still growing. I thought I would just toss in a totally unrelated fun fact you can use at a party. These fingernails aren't growing at all, because they're not attached to anybody, and they're kept in a glass box alongside some of St. Clair's wonderful curls, like the world's worst and possibly stinkiest time capsule. Now, St. Clair was often overshadowed by her more famous mentor, Francis of Assisi, but St. Clair was her own woman, accomplished in her own right. She founded her own order of nuns, the Poor Clares. Inspired by Francis's teachings when she was a teenager, she renounced the world and founded an order based on the ideals of extreme poverty and contemplation. I should probably look into this order because being extremely broke and contemplating being extremely broke is about 99% of what I do. The order spread popularity and houses of Poor Clares were established far away from her home convent in Assisi. Now, it's said that part of what made St. Clair's decision to give up the worldly life so inspiring was that not only was she blessed to be born into a family of great wealth, but oh va-va-voom, St. Clair was a real stunner. Now, the depictions we have to work with may not look like much, but they called her the first Jenner for her luscious lips and flowing locks. As proof of her devotion, Frances trimmed her beautiful extravagant hair as a physical manifestation of rejecting her former vain existence. As you can see, I'm not quite there yet. I'm still quite happy with my vain, disgusting hair. Now, someone down the line managed to get a hold of St. Clair's hair and fingernails. Maybe they were just sweeping the barber room floor. These treasures, for lack of a better word, were kept and encased in a reliquary at the basilica named in her honor. This also contains a rock crystal flask with her fingernails. Really not sure why anyone felt they needed to keep that. I'm not sure how holy these are, but hey, I'm not a saint or a bishop or a pope or any of that stuff. I'm just a YouTuber and I'm barely that even. But if you want to hear more of me narrating some of these strange and peculiar parts of the big globe we share, Top 5 Scary is the place to be. We got a little something for everyone. So make sure you click on through, like this video, subscribe, and hit that little bell, and we can keep on bringing you screams every single day, twice a day, and then some. But do that at the end of this video, okay? We got way more weird Catholic relics coming up for you. Number 4, papal hearts. They say some people wear their hearts on their sleeves, and some people collect 22 hearts in marble urns inside a beautiful reliquary. We all have our hobbies. We all collect things. Just make sure those hearts are still in their original packaging, otherwise, they're totally worthless. Well, these aren't just regular old hearts. These are the hearts of 22 former popes. Obviously, they're former popes if their hearts are, obviously. At the Church of Santi Vincenzo e Anastasio a Trivia. Oof, that's a mouthful, we're not saying that again. You can find the sealed hearts of 22 popes in marble urns for all to appreciate. The popes are listed to the left of the altar, with the oldest coming in all the way from the 15th century with Sixtus V to the fresh and still beating heart of Leo XIII in 1903. Now, this custom of separating a pope's organs from the corpse sounds a bit strange, or a bit Egyptian, like they might mummify them. And then this process was called praecordia, and was done to prevent decay while funeral arrangements were made, and just to test a little bit if they were worried the Pope was going to reanimate. The tradition started up in the 14th century when it was established that when a Pope passed away, they would be mourned for 9 days. 9 days, with suffrage massages being said each day. They borrowed this little schedule from the Byzantines, who observed deaths of their emperors in a very similar manner, really taking a while off. They took a whole pay period to mourn the loss and then you dry those tears right up, get back to work. Now, this was all the rage for popes of yesteryear, very trendy, very in fashion. But Pope Pius X in 1914 had a change of heart when he expressly forbade it in his burial and will. He said, "Don't do any of that weird stuff to me." Those were his exact words, if you can believe it. Now since then, his successors have all agreed and have all done the same. But who's to say? I feel this could be coming back in fashion. Pope Francis, how you feeling? You gotta listen to your heart on this one. Number 3, Hyacinth of Caesarea. Our next entry is the bones of Hyacinth of Caesarea, another Catholic mummy. I'm starting to think there's more Catholic mummies than there were Egyptian ones. Incredibly ornate and gorgeous, the bones of Hyacinth look like something out of one of the Indiana Jones sequels rather than like a real thing you can go and see, but I promise you they are totally extant. On the grounds of the Fürstenfeld Abbey reside the relics of 2 saints. Now, these aren't just like a toenail or a tongue, and more on that later, but these are full-on science class skeletons dressed to the 9 in gold and jewels, encrusted in more diamonds and rubies than you could imagine. They are probably worth more than your and my apartments combined. Old Hyacinth, Hycy, as he liked to be called by his friends, was an obscure martyr from the early days of Christianity, slain by the Romans for his faith. We know precious little about him today, but we know that his name appears in a list of martyrs from the 4th century, which suggests that he used to be pretty important, and he was popular enough to write his name down on a list, much like what I'm doing right now. Look at how history repeats itself like that. Isn't that fascinating? Now, Hyacinth's skeleton showed up at the Church of the Assumption in, I'm going to excuse the pronunciation here, Fürstenfeldbruck near Munich at an unknown date. Did somebody just dropped him off? Somebody just dumped a bag of bones on the front step like he's a baby you're giving up for adoption at the fire station? No more questions. The church was sacked by the Swedish army in the 17th century, and when it was rebuilt, they really went all out with the decor, going over the top, a little baroque, including a skeleton decked out in bling, looking like he is about to take over the skeleton rap scene. So that's Hyacinth, largely not remembered in life for any particular reason beyond being slain for his religion, and remembered forever as a ludicrously swagged out skeleton. We can all only hope for similar legacies as dear sweet Hyacinth. Number 2, the tongue of Saint Padilla. Did you know your tongue is made up of 8 muscles? Maybe you didn't. Did you know that one of the most important relics to the Catholic Church is a dried up 8,000-year-old tongue that looks like beef jerky kept inside a golden helmet that looks like something out of a dark fantasy 80s movie? Well, now you do. And have you enjoyed how much of this list is mummified bodies in gold? Because I have. St. Anthony was said to be a jewel case of the Bible, making a name for himself with his apparently extremely inspirational sermons that won the Catholic Church many new members. People would flock in just to hear what St. Anthony was talking about. Apparently, he even got a bunch of ex-Christians to reform and rejoin the faith. He was apparently an incredibly accomplished public speaker, and I would say that he had a silver tongue, but we actually have proof of what color his tongue was because it's kept in a little glass jar. St. Anthony would pass away in 1231 from edema, a horrible disease that causes a buildup and blockage of fluid in the body's tissues. Now, some 30 years later, in 1263, he was exhumed, and shocking the gravediggers who were doing it, while his body had rotted and decomposed, his legendary tongue was still intact, as incorruptible as it had been in life, allegedly still wet with saliva. I wonder if he could still taste. Seeing it was a miracle, the gravediggers took his tongue alongside the bottom half of his jaw, and they are both displayed in the Basilica of St. Anthony of Padua in elaborate gold reliquaries. But honestly, it looks like something straight out of Warhammer 40k. Does no one think this is as odd as I do? Maybe I'm an outsider. I didn't grow up terribly Catholic, so I don't really know these imagery. I know the story behind it isn't terribly scary, but the image of this tongue and jaw inside a little glass helmet wrapped in gold looks like something I would ask an AI to make if I typed in nightmare. A tongue shouldn't look like that. And I feel like a jaw shouldn't look like that either. Am I alone in this? Am I weird for thinking this is weird? You let me know down below in the comments if maybe I just lack context on all of this. And number 1, Camillus de Lellis' heart. Camillus de Lellis was a man with a big heart full of love, never ending in generosity. We know just how big his heart is because it is kept in a glass jar and it is salted to preserve its legacy. Camillus started out pretty humble, born in 16th century Naples. He would later become a soldier until a brutal gambling problem would end up overtaking his life, leaving him in rags driving a donkey cart, but he knew that a far better life was out there. Eventually, he was urged by a friar to explore the lighter side of his soul, and eventually someone was able to pierce his heart both figuratively and later literally, and persuaded him into seeking divine retribution. Camillus would devote his life to providing for the ailing, but tragically, and perhaps unsurprisingly if you spent all your time around sick people before modern medicine, a lifetime of caring for the sick led to him also becoming gravely ill, soaking up a litany of ailments, including a sore in his leg for 46 years, a rupture for 38 years, 2 callous sores in the sole of a foot, violent nephritic colics, intense kidney pain, and for a long time a loss of appetite. Now all of these things, working in tandem, would eventually claim Camillus, a man who gave his life to healing the sick. So post-mortem he was canonized and thought of as the patron saint of the sick. And what better way, I ask, to venerate a man famous for his ever-giving heart than to cut his heart out like he was in the Temple of Doom and start salting his heart like it was beef jerky. You can go to St. Mary Magdalene's Church in Rome to go see if his heart, put a stethoscope up to it, check if it's still beating, but it's pretty dried up and tucked away behind glass where you can go and pay your respects and see if it has any life left to bestow and maybe if it'll help you out with an illness at all. Number 5. St. Catherine's head. Coming up first on our list of strange artifacts that the Catholic Church has hidden away is the severed, mummified head of the revered St. Catherine of Siena. You wouldn't really expect there to be a severed head kept out on display, but it is an important head, I've come to understand. When she was young, St. Catherine had a vision of Jesus on a throne surrounded by saints. Afterwards, she devoted her life to Catholicism and she gave herself to the nunnery, cut her hair, scalded herself, and took a vow of celibacy. At 28, Catherine was said to have received the stigmata when 5 red rays shot out of the crucifix she was praying to and pierced her hands, her feet, and her heart. But these were far from the only miracles attributed to the lovely St. Catherine, however. She was said to be seen levitating once during prayer, and even once a priest said he saw a Holy Communion fly from his hand directly into her mouth. Now, I will be honest, that does make her sound a bit like a saintly golden retriever, but okay. Catherine would pass at the young age of 33 and would be canonized a century later. If you don't know, that's a fancy word for being made into a saint post-mortem. While she passed in Rome, there was some disagreement as to where the young saint should be laid to rest eternally. Her hometown of Siena quite wanted her body back. Her spiritual leader, Raymond of Capua, knew he wouldn't really be able to smuggle her entire body past guards in Rome, so he elected to just take her head in a bag, which normally would be terrifying behavior, but it's good here. The story goes that when the guards intercepted Raymond, he prayed to Catherine, and when they looked inside his sack, they found naught but a collection of rose petals and not a severed head. Her final miracle. Now the head was placed in a reliquary. That's a difficult word to say, especially on a teleprompter. The head was placed in a reliquary where it still remains today, and you can go and pray to it, and I promise it's not gonna blink or anything at you, even though it looks like it just might. And if you're looking for way more stories of creepy relics locked away, haunted object, cursed things, cryptids, conspiracies, aliens, the whole scary 9 yards, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. So hit that little bell, hit subscribe, and make sure you do not miss a single thing. Do it after this video, okay? We got way more creepy things locked away coming up for you right now. Number 4, the Grand Grimoire. Our next entry has been formally referred to as the Gospel of Satan and is said to be a cursed book whose knowledge had to be sealed away to protect humanity. So this might be the most deadly book ever published after Hop on Pop. The Grand Grimoire, who is said to have been penned by a priest in the 16th century who was possessed by a litany of demons who compelled the man to put their knowledge to paper. Acting as a scribe for these demons, the man wrote everything they knew about dark incantations, spells, instructions on how to cast rituals, ways to bind a demon to you to make it your little minion and do your bidding. Wait, a demon gave instructions on how it wants to be bound to a human to serve humans? Freaky little demon. That's not all too. There's a step-by-step recipe for a little necromancy if you're down to dabble in some dark arts and make some bones dance to your rhythm, the book really covers all the fun stuff you have been told not to do. It's not just brimstone and hellfire neither. There's rituals to help manipulate luck, how to conduct a seance, and I actually think this is adorable. There's even ways to make people love you in there. But dating tip from old Tay, if you need a demon's help to make them like you, it might not be the strongest relationship. So just a heads up. Now if all of this is sounding super appealing, and I don't blame you, I played a necromancer in Skyrim, I want to make the bones raise. Just know that this book is considered high treason. Even so much as cracking the spine is considered equivalent to selling your soul. So, you know, maybe hold off on that Amazon order for a bit. Also, I'm pretty sure the copy they're selling on Amazon is not the original, because due to the book's cursed reputation, the original copy is said to be locked away in the Vatican's secret archives, and I'm sorry, but no matter how many times you ask, they're not gonna let you look at it, even if you swear you're just taking a little peek just to look at the illustrations and maybe the dedications. They're gonna keep it locked up. I know.
Next up, folks, we've got the unlucky mummy. Granted, I don't think I've ever met a lucky mummy, but make of that what you will. So even though technically speaking, an iceberg and poor building plans caused the end of the Titanic, what if there were supernatural forces at play that pushed the fate of the ship along? Enter, you guessed it, the unlucky mummy. It was donated to the British Museum in July of 1889 by Mrs. Warwick Hunt of Holland Park, London, on behalf of Mr. Arthur F. Wheeler. It was displayed in the first Egyptian room of the museum from the 1890s and has remained on public view ever since, with the exception of periods during the First and Second World Wars, you know, when it was removed from its case for safety. It has left the museum on a number of occasions when it formed part of a temporary exhibition held at 2 venues in Australia, and between February 4th to May 27th of 2007, along with a bunch of other pieces, the unlucky mummy was exhibited at Taiwan's National Palace Museum during a press conference. The mummy to which the article belonged is said to have been left in Egypt, since it never formed part of the collections of the British Museum. The mummy board is currently displayed in room 62. The name unlucky mummy is misleading, as the artifact isn't really a mummy at all. I promise I'm getting to it, but it's a painted wooden mummy board. So it's kind of like the inner coffin lid. It was found at Thebes and can be dated by its shape and the style of its decoration to the late 21st or early 22nd dynasty. In the British Museum, it is known by its serial number EA22542. The beardless face and the position of the hands with the fingers extended show that it was made to cover the mummified body of a woman. Her identity isn't known due to the brief hieroglyphic inscriptions containing only short religious phrases and omitting mention of the name of the deceased. The high quality of the lid indicates that the owner was a person of high rank. It was unusual for such ladies to participate in the musical accompaniments to the rituals in the temple of Amun-Ra. Hence, early British Museum publications described the owner of 22542 as a priestess of Amun-Ra. E. Wallace Budge, keeper of Egyptian and Assyrian antiquities from 1894 to 1924, also suggested that she might have been of royal descent. But we're not quite sure. I'm not a history expert, folks, for a lot of reasons. Alrighty, what are we starting off with today? Oh, none other than the infamous Robert doll. Okay, maybe he isn't ancient compared to a lot of the other artifacts I'll be talking about today, but he makes up for it in the terrifying category. For starters, the doll only looks vaguely human. His nub of a nose looks like a pair of pinholes, and he's covered in like little brown marks, kinda like scars. His eyes are beady and black, and combined with his malevolent smirk, he's terrifying to look at. And that's coming from somebody who loves creepy dolls. Clasped in his lap, he's holding his own toy, a doll with disproportionately positioned eyes and a too big tongue falling out of its mouth. Now, this doll originally belonged to Robert Eugene Otto, an artist described as eccentric, which, you know, most artists are, but I promise, I'll elaborate. Neighbors of Robert used to hear him having a conversation with the doll, and this continued into his adult years. Okay, that's not too weird. He brought it everywhere and talked about it in the first person as if it weren't a doll. That might sound kinda batty, but yeah, it's the best way to deal with cursed objects. Trust me, I'm talking from experience. The doll remained stored in the Otto family home until Robert died in 1974. Now, after his death, a couple bought the house, and their young daughter found the doll in the attic. The girl often claimed that the doll was, trying to enter. Go figure. If it was hidden away, probably for a reason. The doll is now on display in a museum in Key West and is still believed to curse people. His last caretaker before the museum experienced him disappear and reappear as he pleased, along with hearing footsteps and giggling in the attic. Some claimed the doll's expression changed when anybody badmouthed his owner in his presence. He's also been responsible for, a couple of car crashes, some divorces, broken bones. Okay, good Robert, please. I don't need to be cursed. Let's move on, shall we? Next up we have the Dybbuk box, or Dybbuk box. Depending on who you ask, the pronunciations are different all over the interwebs. Nevertheless, in Jewish folklore, this is an evil spirit. Supposedly, a Holocaust survivor accidentally summoned the demon while using a homemade Ouija board that managed to trap it inside the wine cabinet. Okie dokie, let's just unpack that for a second. Somebody summoned something evil with a Ouija board, sealed it in something else, and people keep trying to awaken it? Let sleeping demons lie, for crying out loud. It's a new year. Let's just not bring anything crazy into it. Kevin Mannis bought the box at an estate sale in 2001 and immediately started having nightmares about an evil hag. Ditto for anybody who stayed with him. Now he gave the box to his mother, who suffered a stroke on the same day. By the way, this story was the inspiration for the 2012 horror film, The Possession. You've probably heard about it. The box's later owners have also claimed that, that creature appeared in their nightmares as well. The last owner was Jason Haxton, director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine, who not only had nightmares but developed a strange skin disease and began coughing up red fluids, if you get what I mean. Now at that point, he contacted his local rabbis, sealed the creature back in the box, and gave the cabinet to Zak Bagans. You've probably heard of him? Ghost Adventures? Yeah, that went in his museum. By the way, most recently in 2018, Post Malone fans claimed his series of bad luck was caused by his contact with the cabinet. Look, don't look at me, I believe in omens. Let those things be, let them be. Alrighty, so that brings us to the midway point on today's list, James Dean's car. You know James Dean, right? I hope so. This man freaking loved his 1955 Porsche Spyder, having had it extensively customized, and he affectionately called it, yeah you've guessed it, a little. Now apparently the car was so transparently evil that Sir Alec Guinness, when meeting Dean for lunch, claimed, if you get in that, you're gonna be found dead in it by this time next week. Now James Dean laughed it off. He was like, whatever. He went off to go prepare his car for the Salina sports car races, with his Porsche mechanic, Rolf Weatherich. Enlisting stuntman Bill Hickman to help out, their original plan was to tow, let's call it Little B, to the races, but Rolf felt it would be better to Dean to get used to the vehicle and run the engine in. I'm not the expert here. On that fateful Friday, Rolf sat next to Dean, while Hickman followed with his truck and trailer. Police pulled over the convoy and issued a pair of speeding tickets just outside Bakersfield, but that didn't slow anybody down. Please, this car was meant to go fast. Alright, so we're barreling down Route 466 at an estimated 85 miles per hour when a young student named Donald Turnipseed, driving a Ford two-door, decided to make a sudden turn onto Route 41. Now the impact sent the Ford almost 40 feet down the road and ejected Rolf from the Porsche. James Dean was pronounced dead on arrival at the Paso Robles War Memorial Hospital at 6:20 p.m. But of course, it wouldn't be a curse if it stopped there. When the mechanics tried to repair the wrecked car, it fell on one of them, crushing both his legs. Dr. William Esridge bought the Porsche from a salvage yard in Burbank and proceeded to strip it for parts. He installed the engine into his Lotus race car, then loaned the transmission and suspension parts to fellow doctor and racer Troy McHenry. Now our good doctor crashed the Lotus at the 1956 Pomona sports car races, surviving, but McHenry, not so lucky. He hit a tree in the same race. That was the end of him, and that's where the curse gains its strength. Two thieves who tried to take pieces of the car were both injured. Yep, the curse doesn't stop here. Shortly after those crashes, publicity monger and self-proclaimed King of Customs, George Barris, bought the Spyder, promising to rebuild it. When the mangled frame was found to be beyond recovery, he chose to capitalize on the car's notoriety. The Porsche was loaned to the Los Angeles chapter of the National Safety Council, and from 1957 to 59, it went on a gruesome tour of car shows, movie theaters, and bowling alleys. In March of 1959, while in storage in Fresno, the car caught fire. No idea. Just poof. It suffered remarkably little damage, just 2 melted tires, some singed paint, and fortunately the fire didn't spread to the other vehicles in storage. Now meanwhile, Barris, yeah we all remember him, had sold a pair of tires from the 550 and both reportedly blew at the same time, causing the new owner to, skid off the road. Little B even managed to crush and kill a truck driver who was transporting it. The car has since disappeared into a museum archive, which is probably for the best. I'm nervous enough around regular cars, but the thought of this cursed monstrosity is making me extra jittery. Or that's maybe from the monster I had earlier. But still, as somebody who drives on the 401 on a regular basis, no thank you.
Number 3 on this list is bronze vessels. Indiana University says that these bronze vessels were found in tombs and were made for use in rites performed on ancestral altar or cast specifically for burial with the dead. Only Chinese kings and high-ranking nobility could afford such expensive and labor-intensive artifacts which required a knowledge of mining, smelting, metallurgy, and casting to execute. From Shang Dynasty records comprised of some 200,000 inscriptions on bone and turtle shells, we know that Chinese ancestors were procreated with elaborate rites, feasts, and sacrifices. If ancestors were displeased with the activities of their descendants or the rituals offered to them, they might fail to act on their progeny's behalf or even cause their descendants harm. This could come in the form of poor harvests, droughts, or famine. The Chinese believed in a complex world of spirits which comprised a multitude of nature deities, royal ancestors, and others who controlled important earthly phenomena such as weather, harvests, births, deaths, and military campaigns. So it's pretty clear that these bronze vessels played a role in the rituals the Chinese performed with their dead, but the passage also leads me to believe that they may have been involved in causing people to die in the first place. These are ritualistic artifacts, and considering the Chinese believed in a complex world of spirits, I don't think it's unrealistic to think that they may have used these in rituals to curse someone with a poor harvest or even death. To use these bronze vessels in appealing to a deity and have that deity help them with their current issue. Of course, I'm only speculating here, and the exact use of these things in rituals will probably remain a mystery. Number 2 on this list is the Sanxingdui masks. The Sanxingdui masks are some of the most recent and most mysterious discoveries that archaeologists have made in China in quite some time. Aaron Reich says, remains of a gold mask dating back 3,000 years were found in a huge treasure trove of artifacts discovered at an archaeological site in China's Sichuan province, which sheds more light on an ancient civilization that remains mysterious to historians. The mask consists of around 84% gold, measures 28 centimeters high and 23 centimeters wide, and weighs about 280 grams, according to the English Language Daily reported. But according to Lei Yu, head of the Sanxingdui site excavation team, the whole mask would weigh over half a kilogram. If a whole mask like this was found, it wouldn't just be the largest and heaviest gold object from that period found in China, but the heaviest gold object found from that time period anywhere. The mask remains one of over 500 artifacts found in the cache at the site. The Sichuan province is one of the most mysterious provinces in China. These masks are gorgeous too and look to be extremely valuable. No one currently knows what they were used for. Something this beautiful has to be connected to royalty or to some sort of ancient and important ritual. Potentially something that someone might wear when performing a ritual that would connect them to a god or some other deity. Very little is known about this dynasty and their practices, so sadly these masks and what they were used for will also remain a mystery. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Terracotta Army. The Terracotta Army has got to be the most famous Chinese artifacts to have ever been discovered. There's just simply nothing in the world that comes close to rivaling their uniqueness. Chinese workers digging a well in 1974 made a startling discovery: thousands of life-size terracotta figures of an army prepared for battle. Now called the Terracotta Army or Terracotta Warriors, the figures are located in 3 pits near the city of Xi'an in China's Shaanxi province. After the warriors were discovered, the site became a museum and a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. The pits are situated less than 1 mile to the northeast of a pyramid-shaped mausoleum constructed for the first emperor of China, Xi Zhangquang. According to UNESCO World Heritage Center, archaeologists suspect that the unexcavated tomb could contain an entire replica of the city of Xi'an, which the warriors guard. The 3 pits contain an estimated 8,000 life-size terracotta figures, of which about 2,000 have been excavated. The figures were created to serve the emperor in the afterlife and include a mix of chariots, cavalry, armored soldiers, and archers. There are high-ranking officers, and one of the pits, number 3 actually, served as a command post for the army and contains an honor guard and ornate chariot for the force's chief commander. All 3 pits are active archaeological sites and visitors can see excavations taking place. Maybe the most mysterious thing about all of this is what is in the unexcavated tomb that they're guarding. Based on how the tomb is situated, it's currently impossible to go inside without destroying some of the history, and this is why it remains unsearched. But one has to imagine that whatever is inside of it could be extremely valuable. Whatever is in that unopened tomb warranted the building of over 8,000 statues to guard it. I don't know if I've ever done anything 8,000 times, let alone build extremely intricate statues. Hit me with a comment down below on what you believe these ancient soldiers are actually guarding. Number 5 on this list is a cannon. Hong Kong is pretty much surrounded by water. Their entire culture is very connected to the water with fishing and boats. That's why finding things in the water isn't totally shocking. However, when that thing is a super heavy, super old cannon, then it's a tad bit more interesting. History Things says experts believe that this discovery might lead them to uncover more hidden treasures beneath the harbor city. Bill Jeffrey, the archaeologist working with Hong Kong's Underwater Heritage Group, comments that we see this as the tip of the iceberg. The Hong Kong SAR is 60% water, and yet nearly no archaeology has been done underwater here. The granite stock, which is known as the cross piece that can be found on most anchors, was around 6 feet long. This piece lay 10 feet below water and was situated near Hong Kong's High Island. After investigating this ancient maritime artifact, experts have discovered that this granite stock dates back between 960 to 1278 AD. This anchor fits the exact style and material that would have been used during China's Song Dynasty. I think what makes this so mysterious is that comment about how hardly any of the water has been explored for archaeology. Finding something like this underwater as they did can only mean one thing. Either somebody partied a little too hard 1,000 years ago and decided that taking a cannon out in the middle of the ocean and throwing it overboard was a good idea, or, and much more realistically, there are more archaeological finds to be had underwater. Who knows how many things they could discover just lying at the bottom of the ocean. Number 4 on this list is a tiny bird. Okay, so I'll be honest folks, this one isn't super mysterious, but it did come from China and it is wicked cool. The artifact is a very small bird sculpture, literally so tiny that you could probably fit 20 of them in one hand. It's made from blackened bone and doesn't really look like much. Just a very basic bird potentially sitting atop of a perch. So what makes this thing so special and why has it made our list? Well, this little bird is pretty freaking old. This tiny sculpture of a bird discovered at Lingjing, China is 13,500 years old. We're talking about something that is hundreds to thousands of generations older than we are right now. This Paleolithic bird, being the ripe young age of 13,500 years, is the oldest discovered 3D piece of art in all of East Asia. The way that it's made also indicates that there are a lot more of these little guys to be found. How smooth the sculpture is shows that this wouldn't have been a one-off from the artist and they knew what they were doing. I guarantee that whoever made this that many years ago couldn't even begin to comprehend that their tiny sculpture would make for a talking point on a YouTube video this many years later, and honestly, that's pretty cool.
The Maine Penny, the artifact that Smithsonian's won't display because it shouldn't exist. If there's one Viking artifact American museums treat like radioactive waste, it's the Maine Penny, a real 11th century Norse silver coin found in the United States in a place Vikings were never supposed to be. The coin was discovered in 1957 by a volunteer digger at an archaeological site in Maine known as the Goddard Site. At first, no one realized what it was, but when experts examined it, they were stunned. It was a genuine Norwegian coin minted between 1065 and 1093. That meant only one thing. Vikings had traveled all the way to coastal Maine, but instead of celebrating what should have been one of the most groundbreaking archaeological discoveries in North American history, museums panicked. The Smithsonian, which owns the coin, has consistently refused to display it prominently. For decades it was hidden in storage and only shown by special request. Even now, it is rarely displayed, and when it is, curators attach heavy disclaimers. Why? Well, because the Maine Penny terrifies the academic establishment. If real, it means Vikings had trade routes, travel networks, or direct contact with indigenous groups spanning far beyond the documented settlement at Lance aux Meadows. It suggests layers of history that standard narrative simply does not account for, and that's where the curse begins. Anyone who publicly supports the coin's authenticity is mocked, attacked, or written off as fringe. Museums know this. Exhibiting the coin invites controversy, demands for curriculum changes, and vicious public debates. Multiple archaeologists who publicly backed the coin reported losing grants, facing institutional pushback, or being labeled unreliable. So museums chose the safest option, which is just keep the coin at a site, because the Maine Penny doesn't just challenge history, it challenges the power structures that decide which history actually counts. The Oseberg ship burial, the Viking artifact so sacred, some museums refuse to display the originals. Now, the Oseberg ship is one of the most breathtaking Viking discoveries ever made, but what most people don't know is that many of the artifacts found inside were considered so spiritually charged, so culturally sensitive, and in some cases so potentially cursed that Norway spent decades refusing to display them, and the reason is haunting. The burial belonged to two high-status women, possibly priestesses, sorceresses, or valor, women believed in Viking culture to hold supernatural powers. Now, when archaeologists opened the burial mound in 1904, they found carved wagon pieces, beautifully decorated sleds, animal remains, preserved textiles, and a serpent-headed carving that terrified some workers. One worker said the serpent head had an expression like it was watching us. Others reported getting sick after handling certain, carved wooden objects. One artifact, a carved animal head, was placed into storage after multiple conservators said they felt dread after touching it. But the biggest problem was spiritual, not paranormal. In Norse culture, burial items belonging to high priestesses were believed to contain spiritual energy, especially objects used in ritual magic. Now, these items weren't meant to be touched, let alone displayed. By the mid-20th century, Norway's museums quietly adopted a rule. Many Oseberg artifacts would only be displayed as replicas. The originals were kept locked away because they were too fragile, they were too sacred, they were too spiritually charged. And conservators repeatedly reported accidents, chemical breakdowns, and just really strange deterioration that didn't affect, similar Viking artifacts. Even today, the most powerful items, especially the carved animal heads, are kept hidden except for extremely rare exhibitions. There's no official mention of a curse, but there doesn't have to be. When an entire category of objects is treated like touching them risks something you can't explain, that speaks for itself. The Lewis Chessmen, the haunted Viking chess set museums locked away. If you think a chess set can't be haunted, you've never heard the stories whispered about the Lewis Chessmen, one of the most iconic Viking-era artifacts ever discovered. Carved from walrus ivory and dating back to the 12th century, these eerie little figures were found buried on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland in 1831. But the discovery wasn't peaceful. The man who found them reportedly had nightmares for weeks. Local folklore says, the pieces moved in the night and brought bad luck to whoever kept them for too long. When the artifacts were acquired by British museums, strange stories didn't stop. A museum archive record mentions staff hearing, clattering inside locked display cases. Another described the knights carved with bulging eyes and biting their shields as disturbing to work with. And the British Museum displayed most of the pieces, but here's the part most people don't know. Several of the pieces were originally kept hidden because curators thought the public would be unsettled by them. Even stranger, for over a century, a smaller group of the chessmen were kept out of sight entirely by the National Museum of Scotland due to ongoing debates about their ownership, their origins, and the persistent folklore attached to them. One former curator claimed he refused to work late in the storage room that held the chessmen because he heard noises like something tapping inside the drawer. Were the pieces cursed, haunted, or just unsettlingly lifelike? Whatever the truth is, museums kept portions of the set locked away for a long time, and even today, some of the most notorious pieces are not always on public display, which only makes them more mysterious and more legendary.